So I've seen a lot in my Instagram feed this week about public education.
Oh.
We're in Florida. There's so much alternative education, homeschool, pods, micro schools, homeschool, unschool. There's so many things, and we've talked about this before. And now there's a group of people that are moving back toward public school and championing public school and saying they're advocating for public school, saying public school isn't going to make or break your child. It's what happens at home. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree that I think I'm trying to remember who said it. Or someone we knew said every child is homeschooled, every child is homeschooled, but sometimes just between the hours of 3 p.m. and 8 a.m. type thing. I believe that, again, this is just my humble opinion from what I've seen, the experience that I had working with now thousands of entrepreneurs and the next generation as well. I believe that for the most part, traditional education is antiquated. That's just my opinion. I don't believe it prepares them to uncover their gifts, their talents, a direct runway of where they should be heading a path. And it certainly doesn't prepare them from what I've seen for the practical affairs of life.
And yet there's a whole group that are saying, well, children need to face adversity. Children need to face, socioeconomic diversity. Children need to face discipline. Children need to face. So there's a number of things that are being championed or communicated as we'll send your children to public school. And it's basically hardship. It's kind of what it sounds like. And there are things that we have taught our children just fine without public school, all of those things in different experiences. But what do you say to the person that's like, wow, you're robbing them of large group settings, overcoming differences?
Look, we wrestled with this where I was like, I'm going to take away the wonder years or the happy days from my children. I don't want to do that. That traditional culture that we see on TV, or we might have even experienced ourselves, because I had a wonderful time with friends. I had a lot of friends in high school, and that was an exciting time, and I love sports. However, when I look back of the actual content, I stand firm on this. When you say I'm all for our children having different socioeconomical awarenesses, but I'm not okay with them not learning about money. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was nothing, absolutely zero taught to us about financial intelligence from 1 to 12. And then even for college, where I was a business, I always say I left college not knowing what ROI was. I didn't know what return on investment was. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. It was one term in my economics class that you just had to memorize the definition and mark it on a test. I didn't know how to put it to use, what it meant. And I think that's where I get concerned is children should leave school having a base knowledge of the practical affairs of life. For me, I didn't have that. And also, this is not for everyone, but I struggled in school really badly. For me to sit in the classroom the way that they insisted on learning, the way they did it was torturous.
Right.
I'm a person that has to keep moving. I'm an experiential person. Subjects that I had no interest in, that have done nothing to help me today, I was forced to sit through. And even gaslit to feel horrible and terrible that I was bad at them.
Right.
And that I was going to be a failure. And in fact, in my personal family, we're probably the most career or financially successful, but the worst student. And that's not to say anything, learning's important, but will it benefit my children? And I'm not sold on that at all, personally. But what do you think?
So I agree with you. I think that it's a huge chunk of time to have other people responsible for all influence and outcomes in your child's life. So that's challenging for me to think of. And it just seeing social blow up with these ideas. And one family even took it to Jesus and that Jesus wants children in the look on your face. Like that, if we're disciples, that we are meant to be in these places and that we armor our children to withhold and withstand these experiences and that we're sending them out into the world to be. But here's the deal. Like, there wasn't school when Jesus was rocking around. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're talking about Socrates, and we're talking about, right. And that's how I felt too. When I'm seeing it, I'm like, wait, there wasn't just one claiming that, like, this is why you send your kids to school, like, make them the light in the world. And I just think that that's not, like, I just can't connect with some of this rationale or, like, the other side of the coin of, like, this is why it's so great. I understand structure, and yet we can create structure at home or in, a micro school or a private school. We think hardships. Well, then travel or start businesses, learn interpersonal skills, learn about yourself,
Yeah. I'm again, this is a hard one, and I'm probably too biased in this one because
that's why I was trying to give some examples.
But again, I talk about personal, but then now that we have a almost 21-year-old and almost 23-year-old, they've been able to weigh in, and they, by their own accord, because we gave choice, turned their back on formal traditional education, and they're way further into a path of focus, one of their choice, one where I think they're armed for success at a way younger age than we ever were, and taking financial moves to be investing in real estate, to other things that I was nowhere near at that age. I didn't even have a base understanding, and they've been able to feed back to us like, I'm so glad we had so much less to unlearn. And they've watched friends, and I am not anti-college, but I'm 50% anti-college because I think.
But let's just stick with school, younger.
Well, I am sticking with school because a lot of the feedback is when I was a child, I say, going through grade school and junior high, high school, if you were not going to a 4-year college, you were destined to be a failure. You were destined to be a second-class citizen. Never to achieve any sort of.
You're saying that was the stigma, not that that was actually true.
It wasn't true. That was the stigma. That was the undertone that was always faced. That if you didn't do that, and so I was never a good student. If I got to college, which I did, but again didn't do much for me, I felt the things that I learned after college when I started to take specialized classes for real estate investing and other things in personal development, that's what really helped forge my future, not the college. But I was kind of led on the carrot on the stick that if you don't go to college, then you're going to be a failure. It was that race to nowhere. And I think a lot of people go back to traditional education too, because one of the biggest things I see for saying, well, what do you mean? What's the route you took? Well, how are they going to be tested out for this and for that? And they're not going to get into college. It's scary to be in
full control.
Well, and it's saying now you're taking destiny. You're stepping outside the lines of something.
It's scary to be in full control.
Yeah, well, because you're stepping out of the only path known.
Right.
Go to normal school, do what they say, and then you should be able to get into a college.
So you're saying that the end, start with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind.
Well, if college had such a clear path, we're watching it with people around us. I think college is right for half the people. I think if they have a set career or something they're doing, it can be great. Our boys didn't want to go. And I think that with people close to us where we've seen where they've gone to college and people we really love and care about, they're more confused now than they were 4 years ago before they left for college.
Right.
And that bothers me because I care about these people. And I think it was, again, almost a carrot on a stick, just racing again to nowhere. They didn't have a specialized reason. They weren't clear on why they wanted to go there. And they just kind of got an array of a little bit of stuff here and there that they really don't know how to put to work or put an expertise to. And so it leaves them out in the cold for being productive, effective, or successful. And that bothers me. And I think some of this movement back to saying we're going back to traditional education is because of this fear that they're stepping out. And it's, well, you're not going to be able to go to college. So, man, be prepared to be a second-rate citizen, because you need that education. I think that's fundamentally untrue.
Yeah. And I do think public education is different from it used to be. I mean, we had like the Presidential Fitness Award, like, when the president cared about us touching our toes.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And music class and art class. But all of those things don't receive a grade. They're not part of the, No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind was essentially a race to testing, to scores, to funding, to metrics of measuring teachers' performances. And then we did away with things that you can't measure. Those things on your balance sheet, right?
Yep.
The intangibles, the music, the art, the physical fitness. And so...
But also the subjects we believe in. I was never taught personal development. I wasn't taught relationship skills. I wasn't taught financial intelligence. And those have made a huge difference in my life personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they now spread about too. And learning for children is about learning for children. Education today, when I was a kid, the political landscape was nowhere even remotely as close to as polarizing as it is now. And everyone's got an agenda, and I don't care what side they're coming from. I don't want your political crusade to land on my child's shoulders when they're trying to learn. And so traditional education...
But I would say the same with like religion as well. Do you know, like all of those
I don't care if it's
theologies, right?
If it's coming from either side.
Right.
My child is there to learn, and sometimes it's not going to be what's best for them. It's going to be what's best for someone's agenda. And I don't look kindly on that. In traditional education, again, whether they're coming from the left or the right, I mean, we've seen in traditional education, some of the most powerful priorities of traditional education have been standardized testing companies. When you really dig into them, the amount of influence and the amount of focus they're given. And again, I'm a big trail of follow the money. It's very interesting when you look into that. The second thing are unions. Teachers' unions had a good, I think, nobility to them in the beginning. And now I think it protects their own unions more than the teachers themselves. And they have quite a Gestapo of power and direction, again, bringing into political landscape from either side, and which I support neither side. And then that means that the people left are then the teachers and then the children. And so of those things, I believe, it's my belief in traditional education that standardized testing companies, teachers' unions, teachers, and then students. And that's the order of priority. And that doesn't work for me. I mean, flip that on its head and even get rid of a few of those things.
Yesterday, got into a conversation, like I told you, with a woman that 30 years in the public school system. Now, I've been a director in the public school system. I've taught in the public school system. And her experience, she's been in multiple counties and states and all this other stuff. And now her experience was different than my experience. She was jaded as a, teacher and looking for academic results and looking, she and I had very different perspectives. And it goes back to, we told our children that story of, the people walking on the beach. They stop, the man stops them and is like, hey, I just moved here. What do you think the people, are the people nice? And they say, well, what are the people where you came from? Oh, well, they were lovely. Well, the people here will be lovely. And then the next person, the same conversation, except negative, and like, oh, well, then everyone here is probably going to be bad too. And so I kind of feel like that's how that woman was. My perspective was very different because I do remember a time when I was going home with my teachers if my parents couldn't take me home. I remember a time where, like, I remember and I think of the possibilities within the school system being so positive, and yet the teachers have lost their magic because they've lost their control. And so I think that we've put, I know that you put it in a very, and that's what's great when we talk because you think and I feel. And so, but putting it in like a feeling like these teachers can't show up just to like love and impart who they are anymore. You know what I mean? They don't have support from the parents. They don't have support from the, upper levels. They've got legislation. They've got testing. There's just so many layers. And the thing is, it's like...
Look, I love the teachers.
I just wish,
the only thing of that whole thing that I just, as you said, monologued on, the teachers' unions and the standardized testing companies, I could care less about them. It's the children and the teachers. And there's lots of great teachers. Some of my biggest inspirations have been from teachers in traditional
Right,
education.
exactly.
At the same time, some of the most dreadful experience I had were bad teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've shared some ones of completely out of line, inappropriate teachers.
Right.
And so I'm going to look at all sides of that. And,
right.
and
I just wonder, like, what do you think? So for those families that feel, like we said earlier, it's scary to be like, wait, if I don't send them somewhere, how am I going to be equipped? How do I know how to educate my child? The school system, like the public school systems, they've been doing this for so long, they know what they're doing. Like, how do you empower?
Because it used to be scary. The further you get outside the matrix, the easier it is to look in and go, oh, what was I scared of? To kind of pull the mask off. The best thing I can compare it to, if I don't go to college and get a good job in corporate America and climb the corporate ladder, I'm doomed for failure. You'll never have the success you want, the house, all that. I mean, I can look at that and kind of giggle,
dissemble it,
and say that made no sense whatsoever. You know, that actually was a horrible idea for me, and that's what I was being pitched. Now, well, you step outside this, you're not climbing the corporate ladder. I have no desire to climb the corporate ladder. I'm so glad I didn't choose that path, and that's not for everybody, but for me, it was not. But I was constantly fed that.
Okay, so narrative. How the families that.
Well, the parents that are out there, especially entrepreneur parents who we talk a lot to, say, remember how you used to buy into that. If you don't do this and get a good job, and you're not going to be successful. You look back on that now for entrepreneurs who took the entrepreneurial path, and you go, yeah, that really wasn't true. And so what I tell people is you test out the assumptions and just know that for a lot of people like us included, the longer we stepped outside of it, the easier it was to kind of not take it as seriously.
Okay. And I would say the more involved you can be, the better. So it doesn't matter, if you choose, no matter where you choose to have your child, if you choose to have them at home and you're homeschooling, be involved in their homeschooling. If you choose to send them to public school, be involved in public school. Be involved wherever your children are, pour into that. Don't just be hands off, I think would be my greatest suggestion. I know that I know what we have chosen to do and the why for us. And I also think that, so often families don't have the option of doing some of these alternative ideas, whether it's because busing's not available anywhere other than a public school system, or meal services aren't available anywhere except for a public school system. So I understand that it fills a great need in our society. And I think for those families that are choosing to be there or that need to be there, being involved and still taking charge, like homework, everybody gets homework. These are the things, the values in which you instill in your children and send them away, making certain that your voice is still the loudest voice in their head. So if they go to school and they're hearing these crazy ideas, or maybe people are telling them they're stupid or they're being bullied, like you're the loudest voice in their head. What you're teaching them, your values, your time, your love is still priority in their life and in their experience. And so I just think presence, however you can do it, is what's most important, because there's plenty of people that we know that even homeschool their children, and their children don't get any more time, attention, values, family integration. They truly are even more lost. And so I think that making certain that there's always a strong community and that you have a good
strong
base.
Community is key, and you can have great friends at school and have great teachers. Again, these are all important things. I think the core importance is at home. I'll always be a believer in that. That's where, whether you homeschool, unschool, traditional school, the home unit is one that is enduring. A classroom that you're in will come and go. A school that you're in will come and go. But if you have that family unit that's really strong, and that's more important to me, and I think to us, than traditional education. And I would tell people, if that's what's best for you, then don't feel guilty. Like you said, stay involved and go into it. But if you also are like, hey, I'm not a believer in it, don't feel guilty about that either.
Mm-hmm.
I always say question things. It is great to question things we were being told. Don't question the experts in all sorts of things. question. I always question.
Be involved and question.
Kids come home with 4 hours worth of homework. What are they doing at school? Are they being effective at school? I mean, you and I saw that with homeschooling, where we had people that were early on in the homeschooling, and they were finishing the curriculum 2 to 3 months ahead of the normal school in about 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So they were getting out 2 to 3 months earlier with the school year and that. And so you can't argue those results. So if you're feeling like it's not right for you, then question these things that we saw.
Yeah.
Question the effectiveness. Question what they're doing. Are they getting homework just to have homework, or is it homework that's learning?
Yeah.
I always look at history as one thing too, where it doesn't have to be difficult. When you used to have to learn about a subject like the Civil War, and you're learning just dates, names, but not the actual theme.
Yeah.
Memorization, instead of watching maybe a good documentary that really goes into the heart and soul and the difficulty and the divide, and you watch that with your child, and then you have a discussion on it, and there's no grade. There's no test. There's a discussion and understanding of the terribleness of war and what that war was about. That's going to stick with them for years to come, not by memorizing a date or the name of the treaty or such. And that's where, again, anyway, question the methods. If you don't agree with them, then don't be afraid to step outside the lines.